Welcome to the TryPod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. I'm Jacob Wynn. I will be doing the round 5 preview solo once again tonight, guys. Clarkey has just touched down into Australia, but not in his hometown, Canberra, just yet. I think he's getting in this evening. So he'll be back on deck for the recap. However, Tristan is back on home soil, so we will hear from him today to get a recap of the first month of the year and also look ahead to round 5. And why don't we start with some good news? Bit of good news since we last spoke. Yes, I am pumped up and I have got my fin up. The Fins are top of the ladder after 4 rounds. Isn't it crazy? They got pumped in round 1 and didn't show the ability to tackle. And here we are 3 weeks later, top of the table, 16 points above the Titans. If you are counting at home, sorry about that, Clarkey. And the Fins are favoured this week as well against the suddenly in-form West Tigers. So I will touch on obviously all the round 5 matchups, but also the Tigers and Sharks wins from round 4 shortly, because those were the games I didn't cover on the recap. Please let me know your thoughts as we go through, but more good news to share that's happened since Sunday night. We won another mixed matchup. So I admit it didn't turn out the way I drew it up, but we got an exciting finish. We got only 32 points on the board in Dragons Manly, which was the part I did get right. Won the best bet on Dragons. I felt they could restrict Manly, and lucky they did only hold the Seagulls to 12 points because we needed a low total to get past on Easter Monday. We got exactly 33, that winning field goal. And people ask me, would we have won in extra time? Yes, extra time would have applied. That's fine. It's whatever the final score of that game was, had to exceed 32. We got 33. Now that paid $2.35, which does mean you had a profitable round 4 if you equal staked the best bets and mixed matchups, which is how I suggest. I think they're equally good bets, and that is how we keep our profit record. So 1 month in, 10-6 on best bets, 2-2 on mixed matchups, which are always close to 250 odds. An $11 same gamer already on the board. Like, it hasn't been all good. I'm not pretending it has. I'm not pretending I got everything right, but I'll never be perfect. I'll just say I'll take those results over any 4-week stretch. Now, let's see if we can kick off the next block of best bets the right way. G'day to everybody who's in the house. And I have 4 best bets to share with you, and you're the first people in the world who are going to hear them, starting with Thursday night. I'm taking the Melbourne Storm -5.5 at $1.90 on better, 5.5 in some places and moving up to 6.5 in others. Part of the reason is Munster back, but for me, it's more about the Storm off a bye back home, Tues back from suspension, and I know Brisbane was uber impressive last week. I feel it's a different task to go down to Melbourne. The spot, to me, I just think the Storm are actually the better side right now when you factor Haas and Walsh are still out, having to lay out a converted try. I'm going to play a best bet on the Roosters, something I've already done 3 times this year, and I've been wrong twice, but I'm doing it again. I really struggle to see them losing. And in fact, I think they're going to win very well against the Bulldogs, who are missing a couple of their best players. Addo and Preston are out, while Lindsay Collins returns and bolsters the Roosters. I just thought were very disappointing against Penrith, but you've got to give Penrith a lot of credit for what happened last week. So -9.5 at $1.82.365. Also $1.80 on Dabble. I'm going to back that right in front of your eyes. And no, sorry, I'll waste time if I do that. But you can back that on Dabble as well, $1.80. Next up, I'm going Knights minus a flat 6. So I'm going to go the alt line because I don't love laying 6.5. Just with 6 being a key number. So minus a flat 6, $1.85 alt line on Toppy. And the Knights do host the Dragons. And to me, this is Friday night. The Knights are the better team, and it's a more important game to Newcastle. Like, I loved them at 0-2 on that Sunday against the Storm. Well, 1-3 is similar to 0-2. You don't want to fall to 1-4. Newcastle's better. The Dragons were highly impressive, but I feel like the Dragons were sky high for that Manly game. Flano knew how to beat Manly and how to slow them down for sure. You know, and home advantage for Newcastle. They're going to win this game, I feel, and I feel they should be in control. I thought they should have beaten Melbourne by a lot more than 2 points as well. So I'm happy to lay the flat 6. I know I've gone 3 favourites, but I'm going to cap the round with an underdog, Parramatta Eels. On Sunday night, they do go down to Canberra. I'm taking +2.5 at $1.90 on Toppy and better. It's pretty simple for me. I think the Eels are better than Canberra. Even without Mitch Moses, there's still, I won't say a lot better, but when you're getting 2.5, the home advantage is probably only worth 2.5. So then if I think Para's better team by at least a couple of points, it's a solid enough best bet for me. I know they're both off losses. Both will be really up for the game, but I think Para can find improvement from their halves. Think that can work a bit better, and I think that Parramatta caught a West Tigers side that is riding a real wave right now. So whereas Canberra, I can't make as many excuses for them, at 1 point against Cronulla, conceding 30 straight. So those are my best bets. One more for you. Storm -5.5, $1.90 better. Roosters -9.5, $1.82, 365. Knights minus a flat $6, $1.85. Toppy. Eels +2.5, $1.90. Toppy better. Let's talk about the two games that I didn't get to recap on Sunday. We'll start with Cronulla. As Barney says, I hate money fading the Brisbane Kings. Brisbane was too good last week. I didn't really fade them, but I went either 1 to 10, and Brisbane won by too many points. Have I faded Brisbane any other times? I did fade them in Vegas. That worked out all right, Barn Dog. But respect that, Brisbane fans are going to have confidence going down to Melbourne. That's just not how I see it. Let's talk about quickly Cronulla Canberra. I wanted to play the Sharks. Thought, geez, that's a bit of a fishy line. Again, a week ago, the line was actually 5.5, and I just stayed away from the Sharks. It closed into 3.5, which almost would indicate they're equal teams. And to me, Cronulla are again that margin better than Canberra. So I was kind of hoping that Canberra would surprise people. And then when the Raiders jumped out to 18-0, I'm going, sweet, what a good bet to avoid. And let's not forget that Cronulla conceded the final 32 points of the game against the Tigers. So then if you want to add up those 80 minutes, the last 60 in round 3 and the first 20 in round 4, Cronulla was outscored 50-0. But then Cronulla scored 30 straight themselves. As you know, if you saw it, it was actually 18-all by the break. So Canberra up 18-0, didn't even lead at halftime, and Cronulla went on with it. So that is a bit of a shame. Had that line been 3.5 a week ago, maybe I would have been on Cronulla and I would have been copping it in the first half, but it would have actually been a fun bet to ride home. Raiders blowing leads, as Barney says, a bunch of weak-gutted dogs. Nothing too new here. Then we had history repeating itself in a certain sense on Monday. And look, I referenced that upset, that West's upset over Para from 2 years ago multiple times. Talked about it in the preview pod. You can't forget that game, Easter Monday. And then even in my same game of Winnie's Kitchen, I said, I'm taking Para +1.5. I want Jackson Hastings insurance. Of course, he kicked the winning field goal 2 years ago. And this year it was Aiden Caesar. West went from absolutely feeble in round 2 to smoking Cronulla and now upsetting Parramatta. So how the tables have turned there. And I know that the Eels missed Moses, not least of which on that final penalty shot. But ultimately, I was so impressed by West because Para had most of the ball. West had to defend so much on their line. And Para had an 8-point lead and a man advantage. Really should have closed that game out. So incredible resilience by the Tigers. And, of course, the player that was sin bin is also the man that turned the game when he came back on, the 18-year-old Lockie Galvin. So if you're a Tigers fan and you're already pumped that you signed Luai next year, who I suggest Luai becomes his 7 and you can ride Lockie Galvin. You're going to hope that he's going to have a career to emulate the man who's coaching him. And I want to talk a bit more about Benji's coaching too. In fact, let's make that the next point that I make before we move on. The hypocrisy that in some of the takes around the NRL. I mean, everybody just plays the results. Like, I could not believe my ears. What was this news story a couple of weeks ago? Benji's not experienced enough to coach this team, hasn't coached at first grade level. He doesn't work hard enough. He doesn't work enough hours. I kid you not, I watched NRL 360 on Monday and Buzz Rothfield said, I love the fact that he played golf today. Apparently, Benji got around to golf in on Easter Monday. The fact that he got golf in before the game, it shows you he's relaxed and he's not overcoaching. I mean, can you imagine if Wests are 0-3? There's no journo on the planet that's going to give any credit to Benji for being relaxed and not overcoaching and getting rounds of golf in if they'd lost. But because they won, suddenly it's been spun into a positive. So people, I guess, whatever makes a good story and sounds smart, it kind of grinds my gears just playing the results. I think it's kind of lazy. I could be guilty, but I try to lay out my opinion before it plays out. Then I could be wrong, but at least you can try and use that and you can decide if you agree or not. And you can let me know what you think in the comments. That's my last word on everything that's already happened. But before we look ahead, let's welcome back Tristan from Toppy to the show. He's going to share his reflections. I've asked for some reflections on the season so far from his side of the counter, as well as sharing some market moves for round 5. If I can find that clip, we'll bring it up from Tristan right now.
G'day everyone, it's Tristan Merlihan here from Top Sport. I've been away for a few weeks, unfortunately had to go over to Ireland for a bit of a family situation, which wasn't great, and as a result I missed out on a good chunk of football, but good to be back, and it's been a very interesting start to the season. I think the season started really well from our perspective, where there were quite a few upsets in round 1, particularly the Friday night where the Sharks knocked off the Warriors and also Melbourne knocked off Penrith. They were by far and away our biggest results to start the season. Been a bit pear-shaped since then. In particular, the one game I remember vividly was whilst I was over there weren't many games on TV you could watch in Ireland, but one of them was that Melbourne Storm Warriors game, and obviously that was that fantastic try by Xavier Coates, but it wasn't a great watch from our point of view. We got jammed with the split. We laid the Storm head-to-head and the Warriors plus, and then also laid the Storm at a big price live when it looked like they're in a lot of trouble as well. So that was by far and away the ugliest result. It's been a lot of favourites since, but there's also been a lot of up and down results, which has been good to see. I think the teams we've had to rejig in terms of where our expectations were. Obviously, the Titans, they've had a horror start to the season, and unfortunately, being a big fan and one of their sponsors, I think a lot of people thought they were going to go very well this year, and hasn't worked out that way. And obviously, no Tino now is going to be tough. And then on the other side, the teams that have really gone better than what people expected were the Tigers, I suspect, and also the Raiders. So they've had pretty good starts to the year. I think we've seen a lot of up and down results. I think we've seen a lot of teams in that middle bracket that look like they're hard to beat, that are going to cause upsets at times. And obviously the Panthers still look like they're going to be very, very hard to beat at the end of the year. Just looking at the games this weekend, since the teams have been released, the Storm's been the biggest move. They've gone 2.5 out to 6.5. So that's been a big move. Obviously, a number of players in doubt that are now in there. The Warriors have gone from pick 'em to minus 2.5 as well. And the Dolphins have gone 2.5 out to 4.5. So there's been a few moves there, and nothing like last week. Obviously, last week was something else, but a few moves already, and we'll see where all the games sit once they get to kick off. And hope you're back to winner over this first month of the season. And good luck, and gamble responsibly if you're having a bet this weekend.
Thank you to Tristan. I didn't even ask him to touch on the Titans, but I did say which teams of you had to adjust the power rating, and that applies, unfortunately, in the negative direction. Skeptile, the Melbourne and Roosters line's already gone. Now, I mean, Roosters was 9.5 in a couple of spots, but juiced. But that Melbourne line was 5.5 better, Sportsbet and Ladbrokes. And I just checked while I was playing Tristan's clip. Yep, 6.5 across the board now. So I will try and share my screen. How are we going to go about this? I think I can minimize my ugly mug, and then I can pull up the game like that, and you can see the line there, and that is where we will begin round 5 with a great one to kick off Thursday. Look, I'm a fan of daylight savings. I live in Queensland, so we don't have it. I kind of wish we did, but the one thing I will say that we get the advantage of, apart from having brighter curtains, is 7 p.m. footy. And on a Friday, 5 p.m. footy. Maybe I'm just getting old, but 8 p.m. on a Thursday night to kick off a game is ridiculous. Why do you have to wait till 8 p.m.? So enjoy the daylight savings if you're north of the border. Enjoy that early kickoff, guys, because it does flip over this weekend. We've got the Storm hosting the Broncos. This is 3rd versus 2nd from last year. And the line has climbed. I mean, I think it was 3.5 earlier today. The surprising news that Munster is going to make his season debut, which I think is worth a couple of points, because you knew Hughes was going to be returning from that suspension. And, of course, you knew the Melbourne, otherwise, although they're still missing Big Nuss, is pretty fresh and coming in off a bye. Brisbane have gone no major changes after such an impressive win at Suncorp. And as I said, 5.5, 15 minutes ago, but now 6.5 it is. Look, Melbourne have been as consistent as any team in the competition. When you consider they win that grinding game against Penrith in round 1, like how that win stacks up as well as any this season. When you consider, Penrith, maybe they're slow starters, but Penrith looks so good ever since that game. So give Melbourne their due for that win over Penrith. You come back against New Zealand, which Tristan referenced was one of the most painful losses from the bookie perspective on that particular evening. And coming back against the Warriors is no mean feat. The Warriors are tough to beat this year, and a narrow loss to Newcastle that I think I referenced before, and that's without your first choice halves combination. No disgrace. So Melbourne, yeah, they've been consistent. They've been strong this year. Now they're coming fresher for bye. That's why I want to play them, and I wanted to play them even before Munster was named. If anything, it caught me by surprise. But I think that as that news gets out as well, people will only err towards the Storm too, understanding that that's a full strength side and very tough to beat at Amy Park. I know that Brisbane can also boast one of the wins of the year, beating North Queensland by 26 points, and that's without Brisbane's best back and best forward. But those two remain out now. And while Renault was an absolute maestro Friday night, I'm just less confident that Brisbane backs it up. I know some others in the comments disagree with me, but I just think Brisbane's going to have to be every bit as good as they were last week, and the Cowboys could not hold the footy. The Storm looked the stronger side to me, plus home advantage, plus that bye. I liked the Storm. So whoever jumped on live has a good number in your pocket. So there's the advantage of tuning in live for the pod and for the best bets being at the front of the show. Let's move to Friday, and I'll update the graphic there. And 10.5, which was the case, which was the line already on Better. The Roosters are favoured against the Bulldogs at Accor Stadium. And look, I said it in the recap, the Dogs could have rolled the Rabbitohs. I think with a bit more poise, they're down 10-0, then they hit the front. Opportunities were there. A better side probably goes on with it. But it's a tough turnaround now. You got close, Canterbury, to the Bunnies, but I think the Bunnies have got their own issues. And you lose Addo-Carr. In fact, losing him at halftime really hurt, and he remains out now. And Preston, like tough as nails, gets absolutely obliterated at tackle. You think he's going to fail the HIA. You don't know that he's got a broken jaw. Passes the HIA, comes back on, plays with the broken jaw, but it's been discovered now. And Preston is a real stud second rower that Canterbury can't replace. Meanwhile, the Roosters, if there was any weakness to pick, it was a couple of props being out, and Lindsay Collins, who was one of the best in the game last year, returns. So I know I've copped it for some Roosters bets, and I know I've lost with them twice in a row against Manly and against Penrith, and they were underwhelming in both those occasions. But I go back to the fact that I just thought Penrith was super, super impressive last week, and that they had a lot to do with the way that match went, jumping out to what was it, like a 14-point lead. And I won't even make excuses for the Roosters. Like, yeah, some calls didn't go their way, but the Roosters were outplayed. But I like to take a good team that was outplayed because I think I get them dialed in. They won't look past Canterbury. I just can't see the Roosters dropping to 2 and 3. I still definitely believe they're a contender. And I think the Roosters will want to get in an arm wrestle with Canterbury, be perfectly comfortable to do that, value possession, and win the field position battle and execute better in the back line and win this by a couple of tries at least. I mean, I'd still play it at 10.5, but $9.5.82 was the best way I saw it. And yeah, I'm on a roll with these best bets in terms of not holding back, because the third game of round 5, I've got my third best bet. So I'm on Knights. I'm taking the minus a flat 6, but the conventional line you're going to see is 6.5. You're going to even see some 7.5s with Newcastle as well. Both these teams looked pretty good last week. I know the Knights went down, but they were gallant defeat. And of course, the Dragons pulled the upset of the weekend, you could say, against Manly. In terms of team list, Hastings is now back in the halves. In fact, getting the number 7 jersey back. And Gamble makes way. So Cogger slots to 6. And in addition, Dane Gagai couldn't play for, I think I said, a medical condition in New Zealand, is named again. Leo Thompson has served his suspension. Jaden Brayley gets his first start. So I think these are all positives for Newcastle. St George don't really change the team. I think DeBellin, who I called out for such a great game last week, gets a start now ahead of Laurie. But other than that, you wouldn't change much. Got the reinforcements back last week. You got the win. But I'm playing the favourite here again. As I said, last time the Knights were home 0-2, we backed them. They should have won by more, but they were kind of nervous. I feel just couldn't let that game slip against Melbourne. Melbourne fought hard there. 1-3. Newcastle doesn't want to fall to 1-4 and have to climb a mountain again like they did last year. I mean, Newcastle established themselves as one of the best teams in the comp last year, and it's a similar roster. I know I'm not as high on them this year, but there's things to like. I've really liked Kai. Is it? Oh, now I'm going to fumble the name. Is it Kai Pearce-Paul on an edge? Or Paul Pierce? One of those triple barrel names. Anyway, someone can tell me in the comments. I do feel like the Dragons were really up for that game against Manly, but this will be a different story. Newcastle's a little bit better than the Dragons across the park to me. The forward pack I prefer. Outside backs, it's close. But then, you go to your game breakers. If you want to tell me the Dragons have got the better halves combo because you got Ben Hunt, I'll see your Ben Hunt. I'll raise you a Kalen Ponga. And primetime Friday night footy, the stars come out to shine. This will be my same game multi too. It'll be something Knights centric. And let's ride with Ponga and the boys. As Nick says, just call him KPP. Let's move to Saturday. This is an intriguing one. South Sydney hosting the New Zealand Warriors, and Souths are the slight underdogs. Despite getting off the schneid last week, Souths are +1.5. Alex Johnston is out of this one, while New Zealand gets back an important member of their backline, CNK, and gets the nod at fullback, which is a fair luxury. And I speculated, could you really move Rod? You were so good last week at 1. But I understand it too. They've committed to this pre-season. They've trained this way. And the Warriors' right side attack is so potent. That's the side that Johnson favours, and we know how many tries Watini-Lesniak scored last year. So if you're going to park RTS on a left side, to me that actually makes sense because now you've got threat both sides of the field. And Nickel Cookstad doesn't have as many highlight plays as Roger and isn't going to fake people out of their boots. But at the same time, he's a great organising fullback in attack and defence. So that's going to boost the Warriors for sure, getting him back. And while losing Metcalf is a shame, Tamari Martin's back in time to take that spot. Cape War, though, is also out for New Zealand. But the way I see this game is similar to last week. I still don't trust Souths. They've lost 11 in a row, as we've now touched on. Someone brought that up in the comments, and we've mentioned that the last couple of weeks. 11 in a row, failing to cover the line in NRL games for South Sydney. Now, to give you some context about that would be like flipping a coin 11 times in a row and calling it correctly, which is the equivalent of a 1 in 2,000 probability. If you were betting and you factor in like $1.90 line and you started with $10 and said, I'm just going to go against the South Sydney Rabbitohs every week, your $10 is over $10,000 now. So it's pretty wild. And I'm going to say the same thing I said last week. Let's wait till Souths show me something because, yes, they won, but I was not impressed. I was less than impressed. I didn't think the body language was great. You don't want to read too much into it, but I'm looking at Demetrio in the box. He just looks so nervous. And I get that it's an important game, but I just feel like a really good team, you would see a bit more confidence coming through. Like Cam Murray is the leader of the team, but I don't think he's 100% healthy right now. And I don't think Latrell is absolute barnstorming best. And they're still trying to work out what their best halves combination is. Whiten was a great shot in the arm for this team. But the thing is, I am not afraid to back Souths. I'll back them if I think the situation screams that this is too good to pass up. But I really respect what New Zealand can do. And New Zealand are a tougher competition than Canterbury, clearly, and we've worried, is Egan in, is he not? He's actually back now for sure because he played last week. So it's a pretty even match to me. And if it was completely normal circumstances and Souths weren't massively underperforming, you wouldn't have them here as a home underdog. And if you did, I'd play South Sydney. But I've actually got more confidence in the Warriors that they'll work as a team. Whereas I still I would not be surprised if the Warriors win this game by double digits. And then we look back and say, actually, Souths have been bad all season. And it was just that Canterbury couldn't take opportunities. And that's the only reason Souths registered a win. So I do lean to New Zealand in terms of the head-to-head, if you're wondering. And I think the difference might be Sean Johnson's kicking game, while South seem to just struggle with their kicking at times. And I think the Warriors forward pack can more than match South's as well. So I know South's are at home and you would say are more desperate, but I don't have the confidence in them. What about you guys? Who are you feeling in that one? Let's move later Saturday. So this will be like the Saturday twilight game at 4 Pines Park. It is the Manly Seagulls hosting the Penrith Panthers. And Penrith are 3.5-point favourites. You might say only 3.5-point favourites because the Vicious Fish is back as well. So that's not many points to lay for the 3-time back-to-back-to-back premiers. Manly are stuck with the same side that was super underwhelming against St. George Illawarra too, which I actually respect when a team doesn't panic and overreact to a bad game and the coach gives the players a chance to redeem. So you can say that about Manly this week. DCE will become the most ever capped Seagull. So it is an important occasion. I get that, and home advantage for Manly. And coming off a horrible loss where they were just way off the pace, second best all afternoon, I think that's actually a spot where you want to be on Manly. Like, I can see this being a good spot where Manly definitely got to focus and come into this with a level of performance more similar to that Sunday arvo against the Roosters, where they deserved that victory and they outplayed Sydney. But I won't personally be playing Manly in this one, though. They might be the sharp side, but that line seems too short to me. Now, injured player theory that I spoke about with the other troops lifting while Nathan's out, but that can't carry on for a sustained period of time. So we're going to see that play out. That, like, Penrith are not a better team without Cleary, okay? They probably looked as good last week as they did with any games with Cleary this season. But they're not going to be able to sustain that, clearly. However, when you get the Vicious Fish back, and you've got a Manly side that couldn't match the Dragons, and they've now got to handle Leota, Fish, Kenny, Martin, Yo. I can understand why a lot of people will just play Penrith. It'll be one of those, don't overthink it. You won the comp the last 3 times in a row. The number is small. This might sound silly, but I think people who followed the pod for long enough will understand that I will genuinely include in my thinking, if something's just too obvious, I lose confidence in that bet. So I think everybody is going to play Penrith here, but I won't be shocked if Manly can increase their intensity from last week by tenfold and make a game of this, and it's just going to keep me off it. Later Saturday night, you tell me, is this the game of the round? It's the Finns hosting the Tigers, and my Dolphins are -3.5. And hey, I just spoke about Penrith. Geez, Keegan adds Brookvale might be underwater Saturday. So I've only got so much time. I feel like, if there's a shortcoming, I need to do a better job probably getting across the weather, especially extreme weather. But that would be another reason to just have your caution about Penrith. I think anytime you've got extreme weather, that's going to bring teams closer together. Now, speaking of Penrith, the only 3 teams you could say haven't lost since their first game would be Penrith, Finns, and Tigers, right? All losing their opener and haven't lost since. Correct me in the comments if I've missed anyone else that has done that as well. So therefore, when the Finns play the Tigers, this is 2 of the best form teams in the comp. And I actually said at the start of the year when I looked at the draw, like, I get that the Finns are playing some of their games at Suncorp, but why would they move the Tigers game there? Did the schedule makers know something? I didn't. I wanted that game closer to my home, but now it is a blockbuster. Let's tell it how it is. We've got 2 teams that are playing exciting footy right now, and a line of 3.5 suggests a close game, and that the Dolphins are only slightly better than West. So, is that right? Do we agree with that? Both these teams lose an important player to a hip drop suspension. Plath is out for the Finns, but even more importantly, Galvin will be suspended for 2 weeks for West Tigers. So you've got Ray Stone slotting in to lock. You've got Jaden Sullivan, who did start the year in the halves, now joining Aiden Caesar for West. So at least you do have a kind of a ready-made replacement there. I haven't landed on a play for this game because I respect the way both teams are playing. I don't really want to get in front of either of these sides because I think their confidence is sky high right now. And of course, I look at the matchup and I say to myself, who's the stronger team here? And I think most people will say the Dolphins are the better team, and West have won back-to-back spoons, I understand. But are we sure that's the case? Like, the best player on the field on Saturday night, I think, is going to be Api Coruscant. Buller is getting better and better every week. Yuto Kamano can match Flegler. And that back row of West, Papali, Bateman, Bolle, like, that's a formidable back three. So that's why I haven't played this game, because I honestly think the line's about right. I think the bookies have got this one right. And on the back of the home crowd and maybe more strike in the outside backs, the likes of Hammer and Herbie, maybe that gets the Dolphins home. But it should be a good one. I'll sit back and enjoy. I'll cheer my Finns to remain at the top of the table. I'd like to know who you have in this one. I've stayed out of it. As we move to Sunday, a game that's probably easier for most of us to pick. It is the North Queensland Cowboys hosting the Gold Coast Titans, and the line is 16.5. And I'll be totally honest, I was very close to playing minus 15.5 with the Cowboys, which you can still get. It's in the $1.80s range on 365. I do believe. I just didn't quite pull the trigger. But if you like North Queensland, I would suggest play them earlier rather than later. Keegan says worth checking weather on pretty much every game this week. I saw another comment about weather. Friday, 50 to 80 millimeters of rain. Saturday, 20 odd millimeters. So Friday, we've got, I am laying the points with Roosters, Bulldogs, but I do think they can win that in an arm wrestle, and I think that the Dogs will struggle to score too many in that one. Actually, I'm laying points in both Friday games. So look, if the weather's that extreme, then maybe that is why these lines were a little lighter on than what I expected, to be totally honest. So I appreciate people adding in information and factors, even if it does go contrary to what I'm picking. And as I said, I don't think there's going to be too much disagreement about this one. And as long as there's not a monsoon up in North Queensland, I wouldn't blame you for laying like the 15.5 or 16.5 with North Queensland tonight, because like both these sides were blown out. They're two Queensland sides. But the difference is that North Queensland have shown us what they can do. They were a top 4 level side quite clearly to me. That they still are. North Queensland are a top 4 caliber team, despite the fact that last week they got blown out in Brisbane in a game where they could not hold the ball and gave themselves very little chance to win, especially. Well, they made a lot of errors in the first half, but still were in the game. And then second half, it was too much to overcome. So I know what North Queensland can do. Come home. It's a good team off a bad loss. It's a revenge spot as well, because the Titans actually upset North Queensland, if you recall, late last year. And North Queensland ends up missing the finals by points differential, or one win, the points differential would have got them in. So you could really say that Titans game cost North Queensland finals. Like, it's a pretty simple one here. Is there anyone that disagrees that the Cowboys are going to pile on more pain for the Titans? Peyton has picked the same 17, and I said this about Manly. I respect that. You let the team have a chance to redeem themselves for the Brisbane outing, where, yes, they were blown off the park, but everyone has bad games. The Titans, you knew some changes were coming. I think Sammy's injured. He got injured from that hip drop tackle, but Khan Pereira is also out, Liu and Palacia as well. Now, I'm really not going to tell you that the Titans have a chance here. So it would be North Queensland or nothing. And I think the line only climbs, as I said. So play it now, or it's only going to be even longer. And I was really close. But to me, I don't love fading a team that could not have possibly played any worse in the first month of the year. because you are getting kind of a rock bottom price with the Titans. And if I look at the Titans lineup, there's still too much ability to be a team that is going to get swept aside every single week. But like South Sydney, there could be something really rotten on the interior that we can't quite see, because there's no other excuse for the way that the Titans have capitulated in each and every game this year. So like South Sydney, let me see some signs of life before I put my money on you, Gold Coast. Cows or nothing, I was close. I didn't quite play it. I don't blame you if you do. Finally, about the only underdog I'm liking, and I would pick Para for the outright win here as well in Canberra. So to top it off, it's Canberra minus 2.5 against Parramatta, and I did play that as my best bet, and I think that's $1.90 across the board. And both these sides, Canberra and Parramatta, come off losses. Canberra loses Hosking, which is a big out. Cartwright was scratched the day before the game in round 4 and remains out. And Para have named Madison to start in that spot rather than Tuolangi. Morgan Harper's been dropped, which I don't disagree with, and Simonson comes in. So you got a little bit of an upgrade there. And it was a pretty simple handicap to me. I was kind of surprised that Para was made to be an underdog here. I think they are being written off a little too much for losing to West. And I think you have to give more credit to West Tigers, and you have to probably appreciate that first week without Moses. I know you can get a team lifting when one of your best players is out, but it was an adjustment, obviously, for Dylan Brown to play 7 and for Talangi to play 6, and I could see both having better showings this Sunday night. I think that's a better halves combo than Strange and Fogarty, for example. I think both forward packs play a similar style, but I rate Paras a little bit more highly. I don't know. I look at a Junior Barlow and an RCG as maybe just slightly closer to their primes than a Papali'i and Tapane. Just maybe a little bit more game breaking there. I'd give me Hopgood over Smithies. So that's just that little bit of that difference there. And, Hosking being out for Canberra. And the back lines you could consider to be pretty evenly matched for me. And this could be really tight and it could be low scoring as well. But that's all right to me if I'm catching 2.5. And that's also going to play into the mixed matchup. So I'm pulling up my phone. Sorry to be rude. I'm breaking eye contact with you. I'm going to confirm exactly what I've just agreed with Tristan, because I can share that one with you live. And it should be up on Toppy right now. We are going Knights to outscore Raiders at 2.15. So more than a double up price. The Knights are a 6.5 point favourite. The Raiders only 2.5. I think that Para might get the win there. I think it could be a tight, low scoring game. Yes, I've been alerted to the fact that weather's not going to be good in Newcastle, but I still feel like the Knights can put a few points on the board to win by a comfortable margin and give us enough. I'm looking at 18 plus points. I'm going to feel pretty confident if I've got that many in the bank when it comes around to Sunday night, both night games. And, if you're going to detract from Parramatta, you're going to say the attack's not the same without Moses. But there's no real excuse when it comes to the defense. So I've gone Para over Raiders. Knights over Raiders in the mixed matchup to try and win 3 in a row. Look, Cole says there, Sticky heavily criticised his players, but as did Arthur. Arthur, really said that the team didn't play tough enough and didn't deserve to win. So I don't think Para are going to lament the fact that, if Gutho pushes that kick a metre or two to the right, we get that win. It's early in the year. You're not going to kick stones for too long. You just got to correct what is behaviour that you're not happy with. And I know that's going to be the case of both of these sides, but tell me if you disagree. To me, I think I've got Parramatta finishing many positions higher on the ladder than Canberra this year. And I know Moses is out, but I still think they are the slightly better team. And that's the fundamental basis for my best bet there. So I've got 4 for you to choose or dip into as you like to, plus the mixed matchup. Clark will be back this week. We've got Tristan back on deck. Same game are coming out Friday night for Knights Dragons with better, and Winnie's. I'll be back in the kitchen for Winnie's kitchen. Not that close. I did take Para plus 1.5, which did cover, and I had Fatape for a try, and Olam scored 2 tries. So I got the wrong center there, but that's all right. We'll get back in the kitchen and try and whip up something tasty for the weekend as well. Thank you, everybody who tuned in tonight. I hope you have a fantastic week. I hope if you're still on holidays, enjoy it, or otherwise, I hope you did have a great Easter break and look forward to some of the exciting action for round 5. Best of luck and Lego.